Hey there, you're listening to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. My name is Heike Yates, and on this show we talk about how to unlock your potential in your fitness lifestyle with tips, strategies, and interviews to help you create the life you love. Well, hello there, Heike Yates here. I can't believe it. This is the final podcast of 2018, and what an amazing year it has been. First and foremost, I want to thank you, the listener, for being here and supporting the show. This year covered a lot of topics you wanted to know more about. From how to boost your metabolism, survive the empty nest syndrome, to Kickstarter tips to feeling spunky and sexy, plus gaining more energy, staying motivated, and kicking ass in your life. I had the chance to interview incredible women who shared with us their stories on how they overcame obstacles, tackled challenges, and sometimes completely transformed their lives. I believe that their stories empower other women to find strength, courage, and confidence in their lives. This week's guest is Lorraine C. Ladish, and I'm so incredibly honored to have her on the show. I was really nervous to ask her on the show because she is such a very well-known influencer, and I wondered, with her busy lifestyle, if she even had time to be on the show. I had noticed that she offered another woman to help her with her business on Instagram that I thought, what do I have to lose? I typed the message, held my breath, and hit send. She almost instantly said, "Yes, of course, I would love to." So, without further ado, let's dive in today to today's episode on the Pursue Your Spark podcast, number 34, with journalist and social media enthusiast Lorraine C. Ladish. Enjoy. Hi, welcome everybody to today's Pursue Your Spark podcast. And I am so excited to have an amazing woman here with me today. And her name is Lorraine C. Ladish. And if you have not come across her, I want to share something about who she is and what she does. Lorraine is a journalist, a mom, a social media enthusiast. She's a bilingual author, and she wrote and published almost 20 books. Among them, you have Tu Mejor Edad, and most recently, Reach, from single mom on welfare to digital entrepreneur. Lorraine is the owner and founder of Viva 50 and the Flawed Yogini. Welcome to the show, Lorraine. Thank you so much for being here.
No, it's my pleasure, always.
And we're just going to go right into it. Guys, we just talked about when you see the video, Lorraine is in her bedroom, and she said, ask me. So why is she in her bedroom?
Because, well, you will ask me probably about, balancing life and work and all that. And we don't have a really big house, and we're 5 people. And the bedroom is the only place where I can lock the door and nobody bothers me. So this is where I do my YouTube videos, and I have everything set up. And it might feel like I'm like a teenager, but hey, at this age, who cares, right?
That's very true. Now, I am so lucky that I got a hold of you because you are incredibly freaking crazy busy. So what does a normal day look like for an influencer entrepreneur like you?
It varies. It varies every single day. And although some days, as I shared with you before, it can get overwhelming, like today is one of those days. Usually, I always work my way around yoga. So for me, yoga is very important. So I plan my yoga for the week, and then I work around that. Some days, well, I try to divide my week in, for example, tasks like social media, programming the social media, creating content, taking pictures. Like if I have to take pictures, I'll do my hair, my makeup, and today we'll take advantage and take pictures for sponsored posts and for Instagram. Other days are devoted to signing contracts, sending invoices. And the thing is that in the middle of all this, what makes it a tiny bit overwhelming is that at the same time, one of my kids might come, and then I have to take him to the doctor, and then I have to continue working, and then the other one has a Christmas performance, and then I go there, and then I get home at 10, and then I continue working.
Uh,
So yeah, but it's I love it because as much as there are days that are hard, there are also days where I can take the entire day off and go to the beach.
yeah. We talked about this before when we had a set up for our interview, that as much as we work hard as entrepreneurs, and sometimes an entrepreneur's life is not just 4 hour a day, but we can decide. There's no boss that tells us you have to sit on your butt ski from 9 to 5, or you have to just sit there if you have nothing to do or you're not creative. We can decide how to spend our time. And sometimes there are 14-hour days, and sometimes it's the day for the beach, which I love.
That is so true. And, I was thinking this morning actually, because you know how some days you feel created and some days you just don't.
Yeah.
So I think it was Friday that I had a full day of just pumping out content and meeting deadlines and stuff. The weekend was actually devoted to organizing the office and space and things. And then by Sunday night, I had to write something else, and my brain just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it. And it's just, some days you just don't have the juice. But if you go to an office, you're forced to do things that you might not be ready for.
Yeah, very true. Now, let me add, people may not know where you live, and I love Sarasota, Florida. It's by far one of my most favorite places in Florida. So,
it is a beautiful place. It's relatively small. It's not a big city. We have beautiful beaches when we don't have red tide. We had a really bad red tide this summer, unfortunately. And that meant that we couldn't go to the beach for health reasons. But other than that, it's a town where I can create a lot because it's so easy to live in a small town. My kids walk to school. It's a 5-minute drive everywhere. And again, for a creator, that's great because I'm not distracted by what goes on in a city, for example.
Mm-hmm, that's true. Now, you grew up in Spain, and I was always curious, where in Spain?
So I was born in Madrid, Spain, and at 5 months old or earlier, I was brought to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, lived here in the United States, and then at 5 went back to Spain and mostly lived in Madrid. But I also lived when I was older in Malaga, Valencia, Barcelona, and Sevilla was the last city I lived in before moving to the States 14 years ago. And my daughters were born there, so I have a very special place in my heart for Sevilla, Spain.
Now, I want to intermingle that a little bit because one of your daughters gave you a fabulous gift that had to do with Spain. Share that. I just loved hearing the story.
So my 17-year-old daughter, who last year we had a rough year, and this year she surprised me by using the money that she was going to buy a car with. She is saving that money, and she surprised me with a ticket to go to Spain. And we are both going in February for 10 days. And for me, it was not only I cried my eyes out and I shared it on social media, because it wasn't only that I haven't been in Spain for 10 years. It's also because my daughter saved her hard-earned money and knew that it was hard for me, not financially as much as emotionally, to go to Spain. So I was very touched.
I saw that when you shared that, I was like, oh my God, I just want to kiss your face for being so awesome to you.
Oh, she's, it's funny because you raise kids and they, there's tough times, and I was a very difficult young person. So, it's great, and then it's difficult, and then something like that happens and nothing else matters. And it's great.
Yeah. So let's go back in time, because you wrote your first book when you were 30. What happened then? Yeah. What compelled you to write the book?
That I was turning 30. Exactly that. So I was 29 when I wrote it and 30 when it was published. And the thing was that I grew up with mental illness, with depression, with anxiety, with an eating disorder that almost killed me. I have a family history of mental illness. My sister was, I was going to say she was an alcoholic. She was not into alcoholism, but she was addicted to alcohol. Now she's in recovery. Anyway, so all of this affected me when I was young a lot, and it interfered with my studies. I didn't finish college, for example. And so in my 20s, I was still confused. I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I couldn't. It seemed like I could not bring myself to write anything of consequence. Nothing. I wanted to write fiction, but nothing was coming out. Mm-hmm. So one day I find myself saying, okay, I'm 29. I want to do something really important for me before I turn 30. And that thing was writing a book and publishing it. And then I realized, you know what? There's a book that's begging to come out. It's not the book I want to write, but it's the book that I need to write. And it was the book about my eating disorder, which lasted years, like 20 years. It continued after the book was published. But somehow the feeling of having done what my grandfather, my father had done, they are both authors. My grandfather passed away, but he was a writer. My dad's a writer too. And I grew up writing as a way to get through depression, to get through obstacles. And so the only thing is that I wanted to share my journey and to raise awareness about eating disorders, and I did. And that book was actually really popular in Spain. It got a lot of attention, and to this day, 25 years later, it's still selling. So that changed my life.
Wow. I think that is such an amazing power if you can put those feelings into words and then actually have the guts to publish it to the world.
Well, more than the guts, I think, especially when you're younger, for me, it was more, I remember feeling this, you're not so scared. Now I reflect more when I publish things, especially since they go online and anybody can share them. But when you're younger, when I was younger anyway, I felt this, it was, I didn't even know anybody in the publishing industry, and publishing a book is really, really hard. But I did it. I didn't know agents. I didn't have anybody who could introduce me to somebody. And the story of how I published it is a story in itself. But basically, I bluffed my way into publishing it. And just very briefly, because I would love people to know that even when something seems really, really hard, I got myself on national TV and on national press by telling media that I had written this book about my eating disorder. And then they invited me to their TV program. And then I would send a fax, because it was the years of fax, to the publishers that were considering my book, saying, I'm going to be on TV tonight. So bluffing my way both ways, I got many offers to publish my first book as a complete unknown.
Wow, and that is incredible.
Yeah. But I don't know if I could do that today. See?
You just knew it was good and somebody had to publish it and you wanted to put it out there. I think that, again, it takes so much guts to just step up, also be innovative and not be afraid to be turned back. And I don't know.
I was afraid. I still am. What I've learned is to make friends with my fear. That is a whole different story. I make friends with my fear every day. Every day.
Mm-hmm. Now, the fear, you came to the States, and how did you come here?
Well, I have family here, so I would visit from Spain a lot. My sister lives in San Francisco. My mother's side of the family lives in Pittsburgh. My ex-husband's family lived in Colorado, so we traveled. But 14 years ago, my then husband lost his job in Spain, and he was offered something else in Florida, where I had never set foot, ever. Yeah. And it was the year of all the hurricanes, 14 years ago. And as I was landing, I found out that there was another hurricane coming.
Wow.
I was 41 and my kids were very little. My youngest was 4 months old and my eldest was 3 years old.
Okay.
So even though I have, I'm an American citizen and a Spanish citizen and all that, I speak the language, etc. It was a big culture shock to live here and have to deal with health insurance or how taxes work or find work here, because I've always worked for myself as a writer, a journalist, a translator, fitness instructor, a few different things, mainly a communicator, but I had to start all over. Nobody knew who I was. Where in Spain, I had just published my book number whatever and was promoting it there, but I came here, nobody knew who I was. I had to deal with all that, the insecurity, the fear, but I had to do it, and I found work relatively fast because my husband lost his other job.
Oh goodness!
It was just one obstacle
thing
after another.
After another. I mean, especially, when I came here, I had a job with the Foreign Service, and I was by myself, and I had no kids, so it was a little bit different than having two little munchkins that you have to take care of, and you have another spouse that's not bringing home the bacon, and I mean, back then when I divorced my first husband, my family said, come back to Germany, come back, we'll take care of you. And it was so tempting to go back into the homeland, the nest, and just not have to worry about it. And I said, no, I figure this out somehow. It's going to work. Once I had the kids, I was like, okay, this is different. This changes everything. Where do I want them to grow up? Do I want them to grow up in Germany or here with their dad in my case?
Yes.
So,
yes, I hear you.
So he lost his second job, and it's like, oh my God! And this we're getting to the book too, the Reach book, because that's part of your story.
Yes, and it's a book. Reach. The subtitle is From Single Mom on Welfare to Digital Entrepreneur. Is the only book that I published by myself with no publisher. The reason being that when you write for a publisher, they have certain demands, like the book has to be a certain length and it has to be like this and like that. And of course it has a certain cost. And I just wanted, because when I go to speak at conferences and people ask me, well, how did you, get back on your feet when you lost everything? I just wanted to be able to say, you know what, the book is free, or once in a while, because Amazon doesn't let you do it all the time, or has a very low cost, and etc. And it's the only book I did just honestly to give it away. I don't want to make money with it. It's so when I was 45 and my husband, goodness, it sounds like he lost every job. If he sees this, anyway, but it did happen. The recession came. The recession happened. Our marriage was not okay. When we came from Spain, I was already, I almost didn't come. But our kids were little, and I did, want to try to give it my all. I came from a broken family, and that marked me heavily because the way my parents, who were very young, dealt with a divorce was possibly not what I would have done or what I did when I was older. So I was adamant about hanging on to that marriage for the sake of the kids as long as I could. But there came a moment where I realized at 45, when suddenly we have no income, he has no income, I have no income because as a journalist, print newspapers were closing, nobody wanted translation. So I found myself with nothing and unemployable because I have never had a job by choice. So even the simplest thing as I will be a cashier at the supermarket. I was 45 and had no experience. Well, obviously they're going to hire somebody else who has experience or somebody younger or all that. So I applied to all kinds of jobs, even from warehouse to in a warehouse or cleaning, whatever. I couldn't do it. And plus, what would I do with my children? Somebody had to take care of them, right? And anyway, so when I lost absolutely everything and had maxed out my credit just to make a living or to, sustain the family, I one day realized this is not going anywhere. And I walked away. I walked away with nothing. I didn't take the girls. I did what you did. I stayed in the States because I wanted my children to grow up close to their dad.
Yeah.
And so I went to a very tiny apartment where my family helped me to, get the lease and all that, and set me up. I was able to sell sterling silver jewelry through a catalog. I hated it. I was very embarrassed of calling people. I would cry. I do not like selling. It was really bad, but I was able to do it. And so then my girls were 4 and 7 years old.
Okay.
And the only thing I had, I would cry myself to sleep often. It was not the toughest part of my life, but it was the toughest part of my life with kids. And as you said, that changes everything. So I couldn't allow myself to just fall into a depression. And my family did send me some money from Spain. My sister helped me. So, my ex-husband really didn't have money either. So he helped a teeny bit, but he really couldn't.
Yeah.
So the point is that one day I found myself like, wow, what can I do? And I was going to be evicted. And this is all in this book, and Reach from Single Mom on Welfare.
So incredible. I mean, it just gives me goosebumps when you tell me the story, because I can put myself so much in your shoes. Because it's like when you said your kids were 4 and 7, I went through a big the separation and the no money when my kids were 4 and 7. So, you just want to run away, hide your head in the dirt or do something, but you can't.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that the girls now remember that time with fondness. I'm like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, you used to take us to the free movies or the dollar movies, and we went and to the park and we did free things because I couldn't take them to places where we had to spend money.
Yeah.
But we had no TV. I mean, I didn't care about TV, but we didn't have it because, I couldn't pay the cable or whatever. So they just watched DVDs in Spanish because I wanted them to learn Spanish. But they remember that, and they think it was great. They only remember that sometimes they're like, you did sleep a lot, and that was probably because I couldn't get out of bed in the morning on a weekend. But the point is that I was very depressed at one point, and I couldn't pay the rent. My family really couldn't send me more money. And I realized that I did have something that I could sell. And it was a box of jewelry with the jewelry that had been given to me since I was a kid. And that included like a ring that my grandfather was wearing the day he died, my wedding rings, I don't know, things that they had given to my kids when they were babies, a lot of things that meant something to me. But I took them to the jewelry and I did it in 2 steps, and it was painful because in Spain you go sell jewelry, they weigh it, and here you go, your money. In the United States, they take a picture of everything, they make sure it's gold, they weigh it. So that took like 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And my little girl was looking at all the jewelry in the store and all happy, and I was anguished because I was giving away like parts of my life and my family and memories. And so the man gave me a check. I'm still friends with him on Facebook after 10 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, a lot of those people are still in my life in somehow. And so he handed me a check, and that was barely enough to cover the rent, and I kept on going. And another thing that happened, and that's what really made me kind of move forward, was that somebody I met at a dance studio, because I did take care of myself in that time. She found out that I had sold the jewelry and asked me, how much did they pay you? And I said, well, whatever, did they pay you good money? And I said, I don't know, I paid the rent with it. And she said, well, come home, I have something for you. I didn't know her very well. She was a school teacher, younger than I was, and very nice person. But she brought me a box, and in the box were the rings, the engagement ring and wedding ring of her 2 failed marriages. And she had been saving them to give to someone. And she said, that someone is you.
Oh my God.
Please keep them and sell them to feed your daughters. And that night, it was night, and I went home. I drove home crying in the rain.
Oh.
I will never forget the drive back, but I was crying of knowing that there are good people out there. And I thought, if these people who are, I don't know, the teachers who would give my kids clothes, or, they put us on the Christmas charity gift charity list. And so I thought, I cannot let them down. Mm-hmm. They believe in me. I need to believe in myself. And that was the beginning of a lot of different things that led to me basically taking my skills from paper to online and eventually making a really good living compared to what I have. I mean, more than I've ever made in my life.
So
As
where
online.
did the yogini come in, the flawed yogini?
So I've always run well, first of all, I started yoga and running when I was 12 because I was a very peculiar child.
Okay, 12 running, I can see yoga, all right.
Well, my dad gave me a book, and I was very introverted, and my father and I started running, and it was a way for me to keep my depression at bay. And so all my life I've run or danced or, done some form of fitness. And I started doing yoga with the book, which I still own. It's all broken. And so I went to yoga on and off throughout life, but I mainly loved dance and running. At 48, I ran a half marathon because a friend of mine wanted to do it. And I thought, well, let's do this. And my goal was to finish it running. I didn't care how long it took me, but I did not want to walk. I wanted to run. So in that half marathon, in the training, I injured myself because I trained too hard. I had bronchitis, had to cut back, and then I trained double hard. Injured my hip as I was running, and I didn't stop. So there you go. So that happened at 48. So for the next few years, I was not okay. I went to the doctor, and they gave me some rehab thing to do. And so I did, walking and running a tiny bit and a TRX, whatever. Then the man that later became my second husband and the one, he was teaching a photography course in the mountains. And there was this guy who taught yoga. And there was a class in the morning. I hate getting up early, but I got up, went to the class. And 3 days later, my hip didn't hurt. And I was like, wow. So I came back to Sarasota and started practicing yoga every day. That was almost 4 years ago. And since then, I'm taking my yoga certification course now to become a certified instructor. I'm already certified in chair yoga, but I want to finish my 200 hours to be a certified yoga instructor. But the course is specially designed for women over 50.
Because I thought you already passed the test.
No, that is just a part of it. I have my certification for chair yoga, but in January I will be completely certified.
Oh, wow. Because your yoga pictures are incredible. I mean, I was like, when I first saw you on Instagram, and that's, guys, how we met on Instagram, because I see this woman that's my age, and she bends like a pretzel, and I'm thinking, I'm an Ironman, but I can't put my leg up this high or this bendy. And besides, she's absolutely gorgeous doing it. So I was like, oh my God, look at this. And I wanted to know more about you. And I said, well, what does she do? Who is she? Why can't she bend like this? And more about your life. And you're incredible. The yoga pictures are amazing. And which brings me, is it Philip or Felipe?
Philippe. Neither. Poor guy. He's used to people calling him all kinds of things. Even his family calls him Philip. They called him Philippe, but they call him Philip. However, he's my photographer.
Is he? Is this where you met him at the retreat?
Him and I met when I was 46, and I was a single mom. He was a single dad. And he lived in Sarasota, and I lived in a different city called Naples, Florida. Mm-hmm. And he's a photojournalist and a writer, also multicultural, speaks 2 languages, and his family's from all over the place. And he went down to where I was living to take photos of a Spanish restaurant. And I'm friends with the owner. The Spanish restaurant no longer exists, but so he came in there and took photos and was talking to the owner, and the owner was like, I know this woman that maybe you would be interested in because you sound like you have a lot of things in common. She introduced us via Facebook. We started talking, met up, I think a week later, and that was 9 years ago. And we introduced the kids in December, I think, and they were like brothers and sisters up until this day. And then we married almost 5 years ago, I think, around when you got married. Yeah. Because the kids kept saying, my almost half brother, my almost stepmother, and I'm like, man, we need to make this family a family,
Like you call it a
And
blended family.
yeah, and then we were on a trip somewhere, and somebody said, "Oh, are these your parents?" And the boy, who was a little boy then, now he's taller than I am, and he said, "Oh, they're just dating." And we were living together. I mean, we're like, so. And then I realized, if I go to the school and talk to the teachers, like we all wanted to have, be the person in the children's lives. So we did it, and very happy.
Yeah, it's like the pictures. You guys are such a great family. I love your daughters. I don't see much of your son.
Yeah, he's passing that phase where, I mean, we just made him a room for himself where he can just, an extra room so he could lock himself up in there and do his videos and stuff. But he's 15 and at that stage where he's not into being with a family and photos and stuff.
Yeah, you seem to make it all blend so smoothly. The kids, your business, Viva 50, your love to yoga, your passion. It all seems so effortless. And I'm sure it takes a lot of work.
It's not effortless, but it's not effortless at all. And I was thinking, like, some days I really have to, like, have this one project that I have to get started on, and I will need to physically remove myself from the house because I cannot do it here. And it's not easy for the kids to come from school sometimes and want to talk to me, and me saying, they see me, I'm physically here, but I'm like, doing something else. Mm-hmm. So, but at the same time, like we just did a paid campaign the other day. I mean, brands pay us for, using their stuff if we use it already and like it and all that. And as a family, it's fun sometimes because we're all in it. Like the other day we did something for a client and the kids were involved, and the pictures were with them and my husband too. And my husband's a professional photographer, so that helps us with the photos.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, they all get to enjoy the perks of what I do. So but it's not effortless, no.
It does look effortless. Now, I have one question going back to Reach. Why are you publishing it now? I was curious because
No, the book is actually 2 years old. What happens is that once in a while, what I do is that I promote it and I make it free. Okay. So very recently, I made it free for Black Friday, or I will make it free for Christmas. And the reason that I do that is because I've noticed that if you have something that's always free, people do not take advantage of it.
I agree. I agree.
So once in a while, I give it a good push, because that is just like when I write books or do a blog post or do a YouTube video, I honestly do it because I try to tell people what I wish I had somebody tell me when I was going through a particularly bad time, or maybe I answer questions people have. So that book is the same thing. When somebody writes to me and says, how did you do this, whatever, then that means, okay, it's time to promote the book again, because that way it will reach more people.
Yeah, because
again, I don't make money off of that book, so it's
you have a big media presence with your book, and you're reaching out not only to the English speaking community but to the Hispanic speaking community, and I think that's such a valuable tool to have, a skill to have, that not everybody speaks English and not everybody speaks Spanish. My little Spanish is definitely not enough to read a whole book.
Right, but you speak other languages, so there's that.
What would you say, with all your books and the message that you spread through all the social media, what is a message that you try to relay to other women? What is it that Lorena would say to you?
Well, and this is the subject actually of my next book, and of what I'm going to speak about at a conference, Out Summit, in March, is that people who know me think that I'm really prolific and disciplined and this and that. And I tell them, no, I am not. I am simply somebody who learned how to take advantage of her flaws. We all have them. and put them to good use. And the easiest one to explain is that I have a compulsive and addictive personality, and I already said I had an eating disorder, and I could get addicted to anything. So why not get addicted to something that's good for you, like yoga or writing books, or
Oh,
so I would say find what your weaknesses are, what you think they are, and see how you can redirect them to turn them into an asset.
I love that.
That's my secret.
So there you have it, guys. That's the secret. I guess we're done with the podcast. No.
No, I'm a nut. Like I'm aware of my flaws. I am very much. And I used to be embarrassed about them. And then I thought, you know what? That makes me who I am. Yeah. Right? Everything, the whole thing.
Because a flaw doesn't necessarily have to be something negative. And like you said, you can turn something that could potentially be something like an addictive personality into something that's in, like you're incredibly involved with your community, and you're always on it. You're always helpful. You're always reaching out to anybody who asks you a question. And that's how I got the guts to ask you to be on my podcast. Because I was like, she's so famous. Oh my God. Oh, no. Will she come on my podcast? And you, I don't know what it was, but you said something your dad said, unless you don't know until you try, or something like this along those lines. And you said, yeah, embrace your flaws, or embrace what you love doing. And that was, yeah. So when you think back, when I compare our stories, they're not much unlike. Both of us hit rock bottom at some point in our lives. We stood there with our kids, no money, no resources, and we made it happen. What will be 3 strategies that you could share with other women that are currently in that situation or have been in that situation, thinking back? What would you tell them to do or not to do?
So I don't think I have all the answers or what not to do, because we're all different. But things that helped me and still help me were gratitude. It's huge. It's focusing on what's going right in your life, even in the worst of circumstances. That kept me going and prevented me from falling into deeper depression. Being good to yourself. I think this is something that women forget. And for some reason, out of sheer survival, all my life I've worked on that. Even when I was super broke, at that point, I went to dance classes that I think were $40 a month. And maybe that was $40 or something that I didn't pump gas or something else. And that was a lot of money for me. But I did it because in that hour that I was at the dance studio, or the 2 hours or whatever, I forgot everything. And I came home renewed. And not only that, it also put me in touch with people who were able to help me by giving me work or giving me those jewels or whatever. It was, so do not forget to take care of you. It is not something that is frivolous. It is a necessity. And I tell this to my girls all the time: take care of you. And the third one is going to be to network. And of course, I don't mean maybe going to a networking event if you're really not up to it or can't even think of. It can be online. It can be, just engaging with other people. It's a lot of the business contacts and of the things that I do are because people have found me online. And it is with this tool, when I was starting out 10 years ago in the digital world, there was not what we have today. And 20 years ago, there was not that, certainly. Yeah. So take advantage. I always tell people to do things like you're getting paid, even if you're not, and to think that, because this is true, there is always somebody looking at you online. So if you're using social media to possibly connect with people for work, put out there what you want to attract. And I promise you, and this is not magical. This is simply because somebody's going to look for the hashtag of influencer, or, even if you're not, say you are. And somebody will find that and look at you and say, oh, wow, she does this and she does that. And, oh, well, maybe we should hire her. And it's not ludicrous. It can be true.
That's good advice, because all three things really tie into to making you who you are or you want to become in a transition out of a very difficult situation, as you're super depressed and really don't know where does the money come from, what gonna do, I can't afford clothes for the kids, and whatever it is. It's like having the, like you said, the gratitude, connecting with others, because you're not alone. We're never alone. We just feel alone so many times.
Tell people what you're going through, because if you don't do that, I remember I didn't complain, but I also didn't hide what I was going through. If I had hidden that, I would, the reason I got on welfare and got on food stamps, which I have even worked with Moms Rising, an organization that helps women in many ways for free. I work with them for free to promote this idea that food stamps are a good thing. And I got on that because a friend of mine said, why don't you apply to food stamps? And I thought they were for poor people. And I was poor. But I didn't realize it until somebody else told me. Yeah. And if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't opened up, he wouldn't have suggested it and I wouldn't have gotten the help.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's really, I mean, food stamps has a stigmatism to it that you're like, oh, no. I mean, I have no food, but I can't take up on help of any sort when it comes to that. Back in my days, I had a girlfriend that was feeding us. I had not enough money for food, and she would always say, oh, come on over for dinner. I have all this food. And I felt so embarrassed because I couldn't afford a decent dinner for my kids.
I was there.
She had plenty of money and a nice house. And so we ate so many dinners at her house. And I will always be super grateful because there was just no money left other than, okay, here's pasta again with tomato sauce. So, and thank you for sharing your story too, because that always makes me think back how grateful I am for the people in my life and for the changes they have helped me to accomplish.
Well, and the thing is that when you get back on your feet, you are going to give back. Maybe not to the people who gave to you, but to somebody else. And that's how it works.
Yep.
And I think that pride gets in the way a lot of times in people getting ahead. And really, sometimes all you have to do is ask.
Yeah. And I think as women, from at least my experience, that's the hardest thing to do, is to ask. We think that people should see how horrible we feel, or we don't want to show it because we're proud. And instead of just saying, you know what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no.
Yeah. And but, you know what? People also feel helpful. Like if I have a friend who's in trouble and she asks me for help, I will feel better about myself being able to be of service to her.
Yes.
But if I don't know what she needs, I cannot, do anything because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's also how you say it. It's kind of owning the story and being unapologetically you. We all have ups and downs, and that's fine, and that's part of life. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so I think maybe because I've always worked for myself and income comes and goes and there's this and there's that, I don't think I was embarrassed. I don't think I was embarrassed. I was just, I don't even know the word. It was like I couldn't see hope, or I was, but it was not, there was no shame. I remember being at the supermarket, and I had my food stamps card, and the guy said to me, would you like to donate to the needy? And I said, I can't this year, I'm the needy. And I showed him my card, and he looked all embarrassed. And I was like, because I could see women behind me or in front of me, because it was a time that a lot of people were in trouble who also had the card and they were trying to hide it. And I was like, here's my card, with the American flag on it. I didn't care.
Good.
I didn't care.
Yeah. So when can we expect your new book out?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
When I find the time to physically remove myself from the house and get working on it, that is a big challenge when you're making money doing other stuff, and then you have to carve in the time to do something you are really passionate about. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
how can people find you? Where can people find you?
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Online, if you Google Lorraine C. Ladish, which C is, I want to honor my dad's part of the family, is my Spanish name, Carbonell. Lorraine C. Ladish, that's why I keep it as
You
the
keep it. I
C.
noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Ladish is my mother's maiden name. But anyway, the point is that you can find me anywhere, Lorraine C. Ladish, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere.
And the Flawed Yogini.
Also, yeah, that's also everywhere. And that I started when my grandmother died this summer. But she died at 101, so it wasn't like she was super young. Yeah, but it was still very emotional for me because my grandmother raised me instead of my mother. So, but like she was the person I was with all my life from a very young age. So when she died, even at 101, her head was fine. But because she had grown afraid of going outside because she fell a couple of times, her legs were not okay. And she had a certain, things that were wrong with her that my father later said, I should have told her to walk. I should have told her to do this and that and the other. And I was taking a nap and I woke up and I thought of the Flawed Yogini and that that's when I signed up for being a yoga teacher. But I don't want to be a yoga teacher to teach people to do the crazy poses I do. That's easy. I mean, it's easy to teach able-bodied people. It's easy to teach people who want to do those crazy things.
Yeah.
But what's more difficult is to teach people who are in a wheelchair or who are sitting down all day or who have multiple sclerosis or a bunch of other things, and they think they can't do yoga. Those are the people I want to teach.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Because like you said, going to yoga class, I hear it all the time. Oh, my wrists are not strong enough or whatever they have. And then they don't go, even though they would enjoy it. And I was like, no, you can do it. You just need the right teacher and the right class. And I saw the wheelchairs in one of your photos from the yoga. And I was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. Reaching out to people that are not as able is key. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Well, I have friends who are in wheelchairs and I know people who would love to do yoga and they think they can't. But one person that inspired me a lot, and I shared it on that handle on the Flawed Yogini, is Pauline Dimitri, who is one of the teachers. And she's 81. And when people tell me, older people than me tell me, oh, and I'm 55, and they tell me, oh, you're so young, that's why you're doing this and that. I say, I'm tired of this. I want to share a photo of Pauline, who's 81, and does the same thing.
Yep. And she should have her own Facebook, Instagram account. I told you that.
Yeah, I keep telling her. And the thing is that this woman has survived cancer 4 times. She broke her femur a year ago. And you see her she's not complaining. She's on the mat, and she does say, you are what you think. And I am inspired by her every time I see her. So. Yeah.
I mean, Lorraine, we are inspired by you. Absolutely. And now my listeners will just be blown away. And when they go and see the video of the interview, they will be blown away by your beauty and your kindness.
Well, just as yours, you see what you are, and you are beautiful and astounding, and everything that you say that I am, I think you are.
And would you please say something in your fabulous Spanish accent from Spain to our Latino community? Whatever you want to say. Welcome them. Tell them about the interview or something.
Si alguien que está viendo esto habla español, me encanta hablar español, me encanta expresarme español, y solamente decirles que si son bilingües, que utilicen esa capacidad de hablar en 2 idiomas para comunicarse y animar a su comunidad.
Doesn't it sound just fabulous? I love listening to Lorraine. So I want to say thank you so very much to take some time out of your so busy life, being out here sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. I love it. Thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you. As I told you already, this for me is like a vacation. I forget everything. And then now I will have to go back to reality. So this was
And now it's like, when we're talking, I always feel like we could keep just talking and like that.
I know.
We'll just roll, and at some point we're done. So I'll see you out on Instagram or on the other social media threads. Ciao.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you. So all I can say is, wow, I loved listening to this interview over and over. I loved learning from Lorraine how she overcame so many obstacles in her life and how she mastered them all. Incredible. I love her 3 tips of gratitude, self-care, and networking. It can make a difference in anybody's life. So maybe some of those strategies resonate with you, and I hope you enjoyed this interview just as much as I had interviewing Lorraine. So that's the last podcast for you guys for 2018. Our podcast airs every other week, and I hope you have the most wonderful holidays. Take some of that self-care and have a happy and healthy new year. I'll see you back January 3rd here at the Pursue Your Spark podcast. With that, I'll say ciao.